When Mainers go to the polls in November, they'll be deciding on whether or not to create a red flag law, which would temporarily remove firearms from someone who is a danger to themselves or others. Now, Republicans are trying to add a competing measure to try to strengthen the state's current yellow flag law. Republicans say they want to add on to the yellow flag law we already have on the books by supporting crisis receiving centers, requiring school resource officer education, and establishing a yellow flag safety fund.
Tighten up and embolden the yellow flag law, which we know is very effective. It's been used 800 times since the Lewiston incident, and we want to support our police officer safety as well.
Opponents of this measure are putting forward this competing measure to block the ability of voters to weigh in on whether or not we should strengthen our gun safety laws.
The goal of Republicans is to get this on the same ballot as the red flag law, but given Democrats have a majority in both chambers, it's highly unlikely that will happen.